Our guest on This is America and the World this week is Kirsten Hillman. Ambassador Hillman currently serves as Canada's Deputy Ambassador to the United States. Prior to her posting in Washington, Ambassador Hillman served as Assistant Deputy Minister of the Trade Agreements and Negotiations Branch at Global Affairs Canada. She was Director General of Canada's Trade Negotiations Bureau and Chief Negotiator for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Ambassador, good to sit with you today.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Canada, very, very important to the United States. Tell us three things that we should know about Canada.
Three things. I'll try and limit it to three.
Yes, please.
There are three things I'd like to, let me see what I can tell you. I think the first thing I'd like to say is that we have a very multicultural society. So in addition to our indigenous populations and the French and the English, who were the first European settlers in Canada, we have hundreds of Canadians who have come from all over the world over the years, to the point where now, in Canada, 1 in 5 Canadians wasn't born in Canada. And in our larger centers, for example, Toronto, our biggest city, the population of Toronto, close to 50% were not born in Canada.
Whoa!
So we have a culture of diversity and embracing, diversity and integration within our population, which I think defines Canadians in a really important way. We have a lot of, from the smallest communities to towns to big cities, we have a lot of activities and programs to celebrate the differences between Canadians and let their culture from which they come continue to thrive while they're in Canada.
Okay, so number one.
Number one. Yeah. Number two, and it probably feeds a little bit off of this. I think Canadians are also people who believe very strongly in cooperating internationally, looking out to the world, working with partners, working with allies who share our values, who share our respect for democracy and freedom and human rights and safety and security. And so we support those kinds of institutions that allow for those conversations, the UN, NATO, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank. So Canadians are very much international partners and care to be international partners that believe that rules-based international order will ultimately help support democracy and help keep us in a safer world. And third, Canada is the best customer of the United States of America.
Yeah.
So you sell
Huge.
more to Canada than you sell to China, the UK, and Japan combined.
Ooh.
Yeah. Between our two countries, which is the largest bilateral trading relationship in the world, there is $2 billion worth of goods and services trade, $2 billion every single day.
Wow, $2 billion a day.
Every single day.
And more than you say I trade with China, Japan, and what was there?
China, Japan, and the UK combined.
And the UK combined.
Right.
Wow.
And so this trade obviously supports millions of jobs in Canada, millions of jobs in the United States. And it is, I think, one of the crowning achievements of our country and our relationship with you.
I want to talk about that relationship. A lot of things to talk about. But just get a couple of facts out of the way. It's a huge country, isn't it? I mean, vast.
Yes. Geographically, second biggest country in the world after Russia.
Second biggest. And the border with the United States and the coastline, like huge, huh?
Huge. So large country geographically, 37 million people.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
So small population relative to the United States. And an interesting fact is 90% of our population lives about 100 miles from the U.S. border.
I'd say that again.
90% of our population lives about 100 miles along the U.S. border.
Oh, okay.
For climatic reasons, primarily.
Yeah. As you move a little north,
it gets a little colder.
Yeah.
But that is also true, which helps define, I think, and underscore the importance of that border and the importance of the 400,000 people that cross it between our two countries every day.
Whoa. So population 37 million.
Yes.
Everybody gets a large patch of ground. That's the way I was thinking of it right now. Democracy and a monarchy at the same time? Am I right there?
Right. So it's a constitutional monarchy and a parliamentary democracy.
So you have a prime minister and Queen Elizabeth II, huh?
That's right. So the way it works in a constitutional monarchy is that the role and the powers of the monarch are set out or set forth in the Constitution. And in our Constitution, Queen Elizabeth II, who's represented in Canada by what's called the Governor General. Our Governor General today is a woman by the name of Julie Payette, a former astronaut, wonderful, amazing woman. And she undertakes the responsibilities of the Queen in Canada. But those responsibilities, as I say, are limited by the Constitution, and they're very much sort of a legal and technical nature. The actual political governance of the country is done by the Prime Minister through our parliamentary system.
Trudeau.
Yes.
And capital is?
Ottawa.
Ottawa. So I guess a lot of people would think it would be Toronto, but it is Ottawa, right?
It is Ottawa.
Where does Quebec fit into the picture? I'm trying to, because it's almost like they're their own, I don't want to say this out loud, but it's almost like they're their own little fiefdom or country.
Well, so Quebec is the French-speaking province in the primarily French-speaking province within Canada, although there are French speakers across the country, New Brunswick in particular, but in Manitoba, Ontario, large French-speaking populations, and all the way out to the West Coast. Quebec represents, though, the core of the Quebec and the French society within Canada, and it's the province in which you can go and you can have probably the best croissant you can have this side of France. So I recommend it.
It's like going abroad without going abroad. That's the way I say it.
It's a hugely dynamic, young, engaged, outward-facing province, and like most of our provinces, but it's primarily French-speaking.
Let me go to the break.
Okay.
Deputy Ambassador from Canada to the United States. Her expertise has an awful lot to do with trade, and we're going to talk about that on the other side. This is America and the World. This is America and the World is brought to you by Whittle School and Studios, the U.S.-China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Julia Chang Block, President, the League of Arab States, the Republic of Haiti, the Rotendaro Family Trust, Japan, History, Hospitality, and Advanced Technology, sharing tomorrow. The Forerunner Foundation, dedicated to forward-thinking public policy. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings. Economy between the two countries, huge, 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 huge. What are the major imports and exports that Canada is passing along to us in many regards, and also receiving from us?
So we have the biggest energy trade relationship in the world between oil and gas, electricity. We are very interdependent in the energy field. Manufacturing, raw materials, steel, aluminum, mining, chemicals, agriculture. I mean, honestly, there isn't a sector from manufacturing to raw materials, to services, of course, which is huge, to 3/4 of the Canadian economy is driven by services, as it is in most advanced economies. And so whether it be insurance services or tourism or healthcare or education, these are huge drivers of our bilateral economic relationship as well.
We got to get into some territory here that it's not easy for both of us to talk about, but so President Trump comes along and he assigns a tariff to aluminum and steel. What does that mean for both countries? What does that mean, just simply?
I think that what it means is that it takes a relationship that is a very productive, constructive, trading relationship in this sector between our steel industries and producers and our aluminum industries and producers who buy each other's product to further manufacture them, who have developed a very sophisticated, very efficient economical supply chains, and it causes them problems. It causes them increased prices, those prices that will be passed on to consumers in the form of really increased consumer prices and potentially lost jobs if they become uncompetitive.
Something I read, and help me if I'm wrong on saying this, that in just the building of a car, parts and pieces of it may go back and forth 4, 5, 6, 7,
up to 9 or 10 times.
9 or 10 times
That's
to
right.
build a car.
That's right.
So what's happening between the two countries, and of course Michigan, where you've just been,
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about that. That's auto capital, right? And what's happening on the other side of the border?
Well, that's right. And we're starting to hear from businesses who are saying to us, you know, manufacturing in particular, but other businesses as well, who are saying we are finding that at every step, the inputs into our products here in the United States, because I talk to a lot of American businesses, are being, the costs of those are being increased, whether they're manufacturing farm machinery, whether they're manufacturing pipes and tubes or vehicles, because it's not only the steel and aluminum, but of course other countries, Mexico, the Europeans, Canada, have now also reciprocated and added additional tariffs. So it may be other products that go into those manufactured products that are also going to be more expensive. And as I say, lead to higher costs for all of our consumers.
So President Trump comes along and signals tariffs, and then Prime Minister Trudeau comes along and says, well, if that's going to happen, we've got to stand up for ourselves, and we're going to put some tariffs on your goods. So what's going on there?
Right. So maybe I'd like to maybe start by just backing up a little bit.
Fine.
Because the basis upon which the tariffs were put forward by the U.S. administration was on the basis of what's called a 232 action. This is an action that allows a government to impose tariffs on products if they believe that the importation of those products is a threat to their national security.
Well, I have that as a little note. Is there national security problems between Canada and the United States?
Well, I would say most certainly not.
Yeah.
You know, we are the U.S.'s closest ally. We are our soldiers, many of whom I have had the pleasure to meet since I've been here these past 11 months, across the country, stationed across the country, and your soldiers. They have fought together, they've died together in both world wars, in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Korea. We jointly monitor our airspace through the NORAD, Air Command. And one thing I think very few people know is that the patrol and the protection of North American airspace is a joint Canada-U.S. initiative. And on 9/11, the person who gave the order to close down U.S. airspace to protect the American homeland was a Canadian. It was a Canadian who was in command of our joint American-Canadian airspace.
Wow.
And so in that regard, for Canadians and for our government, it's really, really hard to understand how, in any way, shape, or form, we could be conceived of as a national security threat to the United States.
We depend upon each other so much.
We do.
You were just in Michigan.
Yes.
I spent a lot of my broadcasting career in Michigan, so I know it well. People there are just
Wonderful.
Absolutely terrific. Why is Michigan so important in the bilateral trade?
So Michigan's so exciting. So I will try not to get too excited. Michigan is so exciting. There is such a sophisticated relationship that has grown up between the manufacturing on both sides of the border, on the Ontario side of the border and the Michigan side of the border, not only in autos and auto parts, although that is a significant driver, but also agriculture and other areas. And we have a very amazing, efficient ability to get products across the border. We have there's a bridge between Windsor and Detroit. There are between 7,000 and 10,000 transportation trucks that go across that border every single day.
Is that right?
Every day.
I never knew that.
We are very happy to have also just finished with the U.S. in a joint initiative, choosing the public-private partnership that will be building another bridge in that area in order to supplement the ability of products and goods to move efficiently back and forth between our two countries. Right. It's an economic powerhouse, and it's created, the kind of turnarounds and improvements in the economy in both of our countries in that region is really fantastic.
We have an expression in the United States, don't cry over spilt milk.
Yes.
You know that expression?
I do.
President Trump seems to have focused on that. And I'm going to say, as I understand it, you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? In Canada, you got a lot of very productive farmers. They produce enough milk to satisfy the demands of Canada. The government sets the price of milk. Farmers all happy with this. So the truth of the matter is, you don't really need, if I'm saying this correctly, you don't really need a lot of dairy products coming from the United States. But if dairy products do come from the United States, because you don't need them, you put a high tariff on them to kind of keep the playing field kind of even. Do I understand it correctly?
I am really glad you asked this question because, in fact, no. You do not understand it correctly. So
I've done a little work now.
No, I'm really happy to be able to talk about this. In Canada,
but I mean, that's a sticking point. It's a huge sticking point for the president.
Agriculture generally in trade discussions is some of the more complicated discussions that all countries have at all times. I would like to just say that from the outset. With respect to dairy, the Canadian producers have established a system whereby they manage the production and supply of dairy products in Canada. Mm-hmm. It is not a government run, it is the producer run system.
Okay.
That being said, we are the second largest export market for the United States for dairy products in the world.
Okay.
We're your second biggest export market. And so to your second point around products coming into Canada, or dairy products from the United States coming into Canada being charged huge tariffs, those products that enter our country from the United States come in duty-free. And so that's where there is a very common misunderstanding in this discussion, is that we have granted access to the United States for dairy exports into Canada. And those exports, in fact, have been, are upheld by the rules of the NAFTA. And those exports come in without any tariffs.
But what's the president's 212? He keeps talking about 200 and something tariffs.
Yes.
Is there a tariff on our goods coming into Canada?
So once that amount of dairy exports has been achieved, has been brought into Canada.
So there is a ceiling. There is a ceiling.
Then those tariffs will apply, which is the same, if I may say, for the U.S. with sugar.
But let me ask you a question, Ambassador, if I may.
Please.
Jump in.
Yes.
Is the allowable amount before it reached the ceiling fairly low because you're satisfying your own needs within the country?
Well, I would argue it's not low at all if we're your second biggest export market.
So how do we put a button on this part of the conversation?
I think that we can continue to talk around how to.
What can you offer the president to kind of smooth this over? What can Canada offer?
So I am sure your viewers would love for you and I to be able to negotiate this here right now.
I don't see any reason why not.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Just between the two of us.
That's right. I'm afraid that's not going to happen. But you know what? This is what I really, really think is important to focus on, is that the NAFTA agreement is fundamental to the well-being of Canadians, Americans, Mexicans. It is an agreement that is 25 years old. Mm-hmm. It is an agreement that has proved enormous value to all three economies. It is, and these are the facts, it is an agreement, the trade under NAFTA since its inception has led to 33 million jobs in the United States. Mm-hmm. And these are good paying middle-class jobs. On average, jobs that pay 15 to 20% more than jobs in non-trade related fields.
I know that trade is your area of expertise. They're working on the NAFTA agreement, North American Free Trade Agreement. What are a couple of issues? We're going to come down to the end of our time. So, but what are a couple of issues that are outstanding that we should keep an eye on? You know, we may never know about them, but what are the big sticking points right now?
Well, maybe I could say what I think the most important issues for Canada are.
Okay.
The most important issues for Canada are to ensure that we move towards a NAFTA that is state-of-the-art, that makes our trade as efficient, as effective, as cost-effective, our businesses as profitable and as competitive in this incredibly and increasingly competitive world as possible. So we are looking for an agreement that pushes the envelope in buttressing and further reinforcing this partnership that's worked so well for the three of us. That's what's important. What we won't be able to see our way to doing is anything that rolls us back. Right? Anything that puts up barriers between our countries, that makes trade harder, that makes our companies less competitive, that makes our businesses less competitive. At the most fundamental level, that's what people should be looking for. Okay. Are we heading towards a place that's going to make us all better, that's going to make us more competitive, that's going to make us a powerhouse vis-a-vis the rest of the world? And if so, then we have the recipe for success.
Heading toward the finish line, we've got a couple of minutes. The human side of Canada. You mentioned Indigenous people, French, a British influence. What's at the heart of the culture and the identity of Canadians?
Well, I think that the heart and the culture of Canadians comes from a common set of values. I think our common set of values is very much related to diversity and inclusiveness, openness to the world, openness not only to trade, but openness to partnerships, openness to dynamic relationships across the world. I think Canadians are very fair-minded people. I think that they value, you know, free speech and human rights and democracy and all of the good things that are also valued in this country.
Tourism important to both countries,
yes.
I'm sure.
So, this statistic I looked at in thinking about coming here and talking to you today, which actually I have to say even floored me. We had last year 47 million single-day to multi-day trips of Canadians to the United States. And remember, we are only a 37 million population. So let's just say we're spending a fair bit of money coming back and forth in your country.
You folks, and I should say this out loud, have been so generous regarding immigration and people coming from other countries, and that should be noted as something that is spectacular about Canada. We're having just a horrific time right now ourselves. Hopefully it will be straightened out. We got a lot to do in that area of immigration and immigration reform. You hosted the G7 summit.
Yep.
President Trump left the summit, and all of a sudden he was saying it would be a great idea for Russia to join the G7 and make it the G8 again. What do you think?
Well, any new entry into the G7 would have to be by consensus, and our foreign minister said quite clearly last month that we are not prepared to see President Putin come back to the G7 table.
We are going to we're going to be releasing our interview in a couple of days, but President Trump is going abroad right now, almost as we speak. He's going to visit with Theresa May in England. He's going to pay a social call with the Queen of England. Has a NATO meeting, a huge NATO meeting, and he's going to meet with President Putin as well. From Russia. That's a kind of an international political trifecta. What do you think? Well,
maybe I can mention the NATO meeting. I think that's harkening back to my opening comment about multilateralism and working with partners. We're really firmly believing in the value of working with our NATO allies in this increasingly complex and difficult world. Canada's been proud to participate in every single NATO mission that has taken place since its inception. We're increasing our defense spending by 70% over the next 10 years, and our Prime Minister has recently announced, in fact today, the extension of our mission in Latvia, which is a mission that is designed to shore up European security in the face of Russian aggression. So these are important core priorities for our government from a foreign policy perspective.
U.S. and Canada, major partners in the world. Big future, I'm sure. Ambassador, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. For information about This Is America and the World, and to watch all of our programs, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, and look for us on Facebook and Twitter. You can listen to all of our ambassador interviews on our podcast, The Ambassador Series. It's available on our website and iTunes. This Is America and the World is brought to you by Whittle School and Studios, the U.S.-China Education Trust and F.Y. Chang Foundation, guided by Julia Chang Block, President, the League of Arab States, the Republic of Haiti, the Rotendaro Family Trust, Japan, History, Hospitality, and Advanced Technology, sharing tomorrow. The Forerunner Foundation, dedicated to forward-thinking public policy. And the Embassy Series, uniting people through musical diplomacy, presenting international artists in diplomatic settings.